Hello, everyone who joined our CADAF/Digital Art Month panel, pre-Christmas panel. I see a lot of recognized sort of names, but for whoever is new, we record these panels. Feel free to have your video on, but please know that it is recorded and then we will post it on our YouTube channel as well. And also you are automatically muted as you come in, but the chat is there for you to participate, ask questions, or add your comments. And I will monitor the chat and ask questions to our guests as we progress during our panel, or perhaps at the end. We'll see where the conversation takes us. I'll give it another minute and then to see if there are any latecomers, and then we will start. It's exciting, by the way. It's been thank you for those who have been following us in our panels since the beginning of the year, and it's been great. I can't believe we've been doing this for a year now. It's the end of 2020, but we've covered a lot of different topics, and it's been a great learning experience for me as well, and I hope for you.
Julia, it's time to publish a book.
Yes. Yeah, it is. Yes, it is. Absolutely. Well, without further ado, I'll monitor the chat and the waiting room. By the way, if someone is a sort of a latecomer coming in, but I'm going to start presenting our guests today. Thank you for being here. So women first. So Alex Art, responsible for partnership and marketing at .art. Which is also a partner of CADAF and Digital Art Month Miami. Christina Steinbrecher, international curator and director, co-founder of Blockchain.art. But previously, Christina, you were part of the team that rebranded Vienna Contemporary, which became one of the sort of the major art fairs. But also you were artistic director of Art Moscow Art Fair.
Before, yes.
Again, and William Deresiewicz, author and literary critic, previously professor at Yale University, and writer of The Death of the Artist, that was published in July 2020, if that's correct. Thank you very much for being here. It's actually fantastic to have all of you here. I think the conversation today and the topic is sort of incredibly important. When I thought about this panel and we started sort of brainstorming with Alex and Anastasia, another member of a team member of .art, we thought that it would be really nice to sort of deep dive a little bit about the past of digital art. And then move over to sort of today, so where it started. And I was doing a little bit of research, and according to Rachel Green, who's an art critic, the world of internet art sort of officially began in the early 90s, sort of in 1993, where of course sort of the birth of the World Wide Web, and when artists discover technology as a new way to explore sort of humanity's relationship. And I really like that that example and that sense of, again, that search of giving a sense of humanity that artists, or that has always been present in the history of art, was then now helped by the use of technology. So I want to ask to our speakers, and perhaps Alex, I don't know if you want to take this sort of first answer. What do you feel is the aim of new media art today? Is it still a search of answers of sort of humanity? Did we start like this, but now has the meaning changed?
Great question. I think it's a good way to start our conversation. And I think for the sake of the topic, I would jump back to the 50s, 60s, you know, when the first sort of, I would say, computer art artists, but now they still fall under the branding of new media art, were exploring the potential of what is possible, you know, and because the computers were only accessible to universities or research centers, the first people really playing around were the engineers and the programmers. And for them, it was the computational creativity at stake. And then, as you correctly mentioned, you know, it's evolved, more technology became available. And now I would say the idea of the artist, it doesn't change between digital art or any other medium. But I think when you talk about new media arts, there are artists who are sort of fascinated by the technology itself. And they are exploring the potential of what the software or what can the tool do. And then you have a new wave of artists who are also criticizing the effects of technology on our society. And I think that it is really hard to categorize because there are many different directions and many artists are exploring different themes. But I would say that there are artists who are interested in the technology and there are artists who are interested in the effect of what technology has. And if anyone would like to add, happy to hear.
Yes, thank you. I mean, I don't know if Christina or Bill would like to add anything about it, but I was wondering, you know, you said that, you know, obviously the drivers today could be, yes, again, exploring some of the meaning of humanity, so a little bit more of a philosophical approach through technology, but also just pushing the boundaries of technology itself and see where it could take art. But I was wondering also, in terms of new media art, is you know, since the 90s to today, is it helping sort of creating less boundaries sort of in the world? And boundaries, I'm thinking obviously different languages, different cultures. Is technology given the artists a better tool for freedom of expression? Christina.
Yeah, so just adding to what Alex said, and so I moved to California in 2018, and before that, I very much was a manager and managing in the professional industry, right? And so, and sort of in coming from a European standpoint of the world, so I moved to California, and I encountered blockchain technology, and so I was always talking about like who's an artist, and I had a clear definition what an artist is. And here I encountered very much sort of a question mark, as in, well, I'm a creative. Why do you want? So the idea of the creative, and I think this is what William, the death of the artist, right? So and so when and sorry, so I was coming into the NFT community, and there was like no understanding, at least very far away from an understanding what an artist is to my understanding of an artist. And then I, for myself, made that division between a professional artist and a self-known or self-called artist. And these are two different things, and they go like their way of making art is different. And so I've seen a lot what Alex was referring to, of engineers that are very much fascinated of the newest technology and how to implement that. And they call themselves, I think, creatives, or they like to call themselves artists. And I think Darcy is in writing in the chat, well, they don't, artists or people that were making images, they called themselves technologists at the time, right? And I think very much I encountered here that these technologists that are just on the cusp of newest technology would actually demand that title of the artist for themselves, right? And but basically, I'm in the NFT conversation for the last 1.5 years and looking and really following. But I think I and also that community understands what an artist is, someone who really dedicates his or her full life to the arts and is working continuously to improve their own work, versus a technologist that uses randomly technology to spit out or to produce an artwork. And so the result is absolutely like different. And I think it's still, so what Alex said when she was comparing, so it didn't change basically. It's still technologists very much fascinated by what the latest technology does. And you could see that in this adaptation in the NFT space, that the first NFTs were done by technologists, just understanding how that technology works. And it's still, if you look at the NFT marketplaces, it's still very much the case. So your question, does it allow for diversity? Not in the NFT space, so to speak, but I think available technology, as in making video or photography, and this is, I've been watching the space of artists presenting themselves and using the Instagram platform for themselves. And I think this highly available medium of photography or video or editing tools, I think gave a lot of visibility to artists that in the commercial system of the art world wouldn't have been able to show, because you needed to go there physically, you needed to present themselves, and they are just in other points and geographies of the world. So I think, yes, it allows definitely for a spread and for the upcoming of names and identities and other representations of themselves. I definitely think that technology does it, but I think it's still very much, as Alex said, so this fascination of technologists with that technology, and then to produce whatever sort of creative production they can do first, and then actually professional artists adopt it and give it a bigger sense. They integrate it in a bigger sense structure and give it a meaning other than pure application. And sorry to be so long, but this is my commentary.
It's great. Yeah, that's super interesting, and I understand what you mean, and I agree that there is sort of a distinction, and that artists add an extra element to anything that a technologist could also, maybe an extra meaning to anything that a technology could also produce. To that point, I'd like to read a quote from Bill's book, actually. It's because one of the questions that I had was about also the meaning of being an artist, and you touched upon this, Christina, now in your question, the meaning of being an artist in sort of today's world, in the digital age. So I'm going to read it now, and it says, the internet allows unmediated access to the audience and to the artist. It puts a premium on flexibility, versatility, and extroversion. All of this and a great deal more is changing what we think of art as well. Changing what we think is good, changing what we think is art. I really, really like that quote, Bill. And I think it goes to my question to you. Then what does it mean being an artist today in the digital age? I mean, I know it's not an easy, we could talk about it for a long time, but I think it's a very interesting question that we should all, well, at least that I also ask myself.
It's a very interesting question. So let me answer it as briefly as I can in a couple of ways. One has to do with what Christina already referred to. I would trace it which is that more and more people are calling themselves artists or creators or creatives, and the lines between those things are getting blurred. I actually connect that to the way that art and creativity has entered the market. So the way I see it, art, well, let me back up. Creativity has migrated as a concept from the arts to business. This especially started to happen in the 90s with Silicon Valley and sort of the self-created image of Steve Jobs as this kind of bohemian artiste entrepreneur, which became very popular in Silicon Valley and then throughout the business world. Richard Florida's book in 2002 about the creative class and how they were going to transform cities, all of a sudden made creativity into this very valuable business commodity that everybody wanted to promote and everybody wanted to claim for themselves. So again, instead of being an aspect or the essence of art, it became a business concept. Anything creative in the marketplace started to crowd into the same category as art. And everybody started to claim or want to claim themselves as creative or even as artists. People who make food, people who write computer code, people who work for across all kinds of industries. So it's not so much that art disappeared as that it got swallowed by this larger category of creativity. And again, a lot of this had to do with Apple computers in particular and the way that it was marketing its tools by convincing everyone that they were artists that needed to buy expensive computers. The idea became floated that everyone is an artist and everyone has a right to claim the title of artist. And so I think it really has eroded people's understanding of what making art involves and the kind of commitment, as you referred to earlier, the kind of commitment that being an artist involves. That was actually only one of my two answers, but I'll confine myself to that for now.
Thank you. I don't know, Alex, if you have anything to add to that from your point of view.
No, I agree with William, and I think maybe, just maybe, we are missing, we're missing the right terms to define certain things. A couple of years back, I was at a very wonderful presentation by an artist called Alina. Maybe some of you know her. She basically was one of the pioneers of net art, and she had a very strong statement about the way we use the term technology. And by calling any device technology, we are empowering it and we're giving away the power. So why don't we call our computer a computer? Why do we have to call everything technology? And I think it's almost a similar way that because we refer to art, and art is very diverse, we have martial arts, we have the arts of bakery. We can't just remove these terms and stop calling it art, but maybe we need new terms or we need to define better and separate certain themes in the art world and certain artists who perhaps do deserve, they have a professional career as an artist that's in comparison to others. But I guess that's a more philosophical discussion to have at this point.
No, but I think you're right. And what Bill, you were saying to me is incredibly interesting because as I said, I've always ever worked in the commercial side of the art. So for me, it was the art market and specifically the secondary market. So in a way, just got a sort of more established artists that have entered the secondary market, contemporary or obviously already passed away. But I wonder whether then today, because you said that it's sort of the artists now they have to differentiate themselves within that larger group of creative people in the creative world that obviously technology has sort of opened up, is actually the market, is the market a good differentiator to decide who is an artist and who is also a technologist, and therefore, and this is also obviously useful when we talk about the digital art realm. But I wonder also, because the evolution of art as a profession and the development of the market in the 60s, the 70s, and the 80s, and today, of course, the birth of a lot of digital art platform to sell digital art online. I mean, is it really? So my first question is, sorry, I'm going on a little bit longer, is actually the market's differentiator for us to decide who's an artist and who's not? It's obviously a little bit of a provocative question. But then the other question is, then is there a difference for an artist to sell in the new digital sphere? So with digital selling platform, whether it's Instagram or whether it's a marketplace, but it's digitally, or is it, better to define yourself as an artist to go to the brick and mortar way of selling sort of your art?
Julia, may I come in? So,
yeah, absolutely. Yes.
So because
there are two questions in one.
So I have I'm in a position that I'm fundraising, as Annette said. In fundraising, there's no fun, right? And so and I have a lot of these questions, because I'm coming from that professional art world and saying, okay, this is my product, and I'm giving a solution to the professional art world to use blockchain technology and basically to onboard galleries. And I do that through the galleries and through the professional artists. And then I'm also speaking to investors that come purely from the blockchain end, and they look and they look at the NFT marketplace and say, well, artist or creative that and that, he just sold an NFT for $50,000 US. And I'm like, it's okay, we do this live activity. It's like, can you find any information about this person? Well, no. Does this artist exist in any other way than in this one trade? No. So if you would, even if you sort of have interest, or do you think that's that's like an interesting image, would you take that your 50,000 K, and would you, without any knowledge of what the artist does he exist outside, does he actually produce shows, right? So is there any not even community, but is there any activity outside of that singular data entry point of to show that this is a profession, right? And so this is again back to William's remark, that to be an artist is a profession where the artist gradually works on the output, on the artworks produced, versus this technologist that considers the drop of an NFT as a project, right? So and I think the art market and the commercial art market is actually not a bad tool. I don't mean it's a great tool for every professional artist, but in order to diversify, is that an artwork or is that not an artwork, or is that an artist? And it's not a bad tool, because the professional art market demands of a certain number of artworks in the market in order to give that artist and that artwork even a price, right? So you cannot just dump 10 artworks on, I don't know, let's say on an auction. The auction house will not be interested, even if it's, I don't know, the cousin of Malevich. No one will be interested, and said, put it in your home, store it, beautiful, be happy about it, but there's no value to that, because of that limited number of works. There is no market for that. We need a certain number of works to even create a market for that. And what does it mean? A number of works not created in 10 days in a row, but over a period of time where you see actually the evolution and meaning of in that artwork. And this also counts for artists that produce digitally. You see the evolution of artists adopting technology over time and working with that. And I'm not saying that the commercial art market does good to every artist, right? But at least applying these rules singles out a lot of technologists that call themselves artists. And as the commercial art market actually votes by their dollar and by their whatever currency, it's at least one framework that we can single out, or that the market can single out non-professional artists that are in for the project, and that then go ahead and forget it and, I don't know, do something else. And I think that's my commentary on that.
It occurs to me, and I should stipulate that I know almost nothing about the digital art world. That's not what my book is about. It's about the effect of digitization on the arts in general, music, writing, film and television, and the world of visual art. And mainly, I don't deal with digital art and visual art. But what occurs to me is that digital art is challenging the value system of the art world in a way that's not true in other arts, because the visual art world works so differently than other arts. In other arts, you're mass producing a novel, a movie, a song, and asking people to pay a small amount of money for it. And there's a general uniformity of price across each art. You know, books all cost more or less the same. In the visual art world, obviously, you're creating unique objects that go for a great deal of money. That's how the economy works. And value is created through art world discourse and art world institutions. I mean, I don't think this is going to come as a shock to anyone. It's not about somebody in isolation saying, I like that image, I'm going to pay $50,000 or $10 million for it. Value is created socially. So in some ways, digitization has been much more of a problem for the other arts because it's devalued that content to zero. I mean, think about what Napster did to music. And those artists can hardly make a living at all. In the art world, what you're making me think is that digital art threatens the economy in a different way because it circumvents those value systems. And like you said, who is this person? Where does this image come from? This person, we don't know how they've been credentialed. We don't know who represents them. We don't know which museums have showed them. So we don't know how to put price on that work. So it's pointing to the fact that just sort of the intrinsic value, the sort of the aesthetic response of an individual observer enters into this in a very different way, right? It's not supposed to count for anything really in the art world, but all of a sudden, maybe it will. It doesn't count for anything in terms of creating value. Value is created socially. Value either in the sense of perceived aesthetic value or of financial value. But if all of a sudden people can post things and someone else is going to pay $50,000, even though we don't know who this person is, it exposes something about the system that's uncomfortable. No?
You mean it is uncomfortable?
It exposes the fact that that value is created socially, that value is created through collective agreement. Yes. Or collective processes of discourse at institutional structures.
Yes, I mean, I think that the value of art, yes, I agree with you, is created socially, is created by whoever is willing to pay, that amount, and therefore I see something now online, for example, and I say, oh, this, whatever, it's offered at a price, and I'm willing to pay, and therefore But
why, forgive me for interrupting, but why are people willing to pay so much? They're willing to pay so much because the art world tells them that's what it's worth, right? Because this is a person who has a degree from Yale, who's been shown at X museums, who's represented by a certain gallery, whom critics have written good things about, and whom other people have paid comparable amounts of money for works by them. So it's not the individual choice of an individual person. I mean, it is nominally, but that choice is very highly structured.
I agree with you, but I think we're talking about sort of like two slightly different things, right? So, and I agree with you that sort of value and sort of the industry, how it takes an artist that got some recognition, takes and puts it through the industry through shows and then other shows, and then so it creates value on that end. And that is still true, but at the same time, I think also tools like Instagram have propelled artists that have none of that recognition, sort of that industry recognition, and have created a market for them, and also then have later been picked up by that industry, by the art industry and by museums. So as a later effect, they wouldn't have chosen, but yes, since there's the big audience and they hit the nerve, this artist hit the nerve, and they constantly produce work. And I think this is now pretty much an acceptable way, and artists use that. And so artists produce work and they find that audience, and then I expect that this will be more actually the case, that by being recognized sort of by a sub audience or by your personal audience, you will be also propelled into a museum, or that, so that this wall is definitely coming down, and that curators are actively looking into these tools. I was referring to the NFT marketplace, and this is even a different animal, so to speak, the non-fungible token marketplace. It is basically out of any of that context, even any of that recognition context, as you refer to, right? It's more right now, if you even look at it, it's a more a speculative tool. And it's fair. So if you see a token, if you see something and you want to pay $50,000 for it, go for it. That's fantastic. Yeah. If you have that money and if you want to invest in that, that's all fine. But it's if you look, if you research the development of it, it's more a speculation tool, and it's very much removed from the underlying asset. So it's a monetary speculation tool, and it's not even a marketplace like Instagram for work where you present themselves. It's even a more different sort of animal. And I think this has to be sort of, I don't know, divided apart. Yeah. So it's not, you cannot, this conversation about, well, it's actually, you can be found there and create a market. It's still slightly a different conversation when it comes to the NFT marketplace, just to draw that distinction a little bit. Yeah. So.
Yeah, I had a small comment as well. So William mentioned
Yes.
that the whole idea of like books and music, and we derived value from replicating it and selling it at low price points. And it's funny because when it comes to the NFT market, it's the complete opposite. So digital art, people were unsure about buying it because it's so easy to replicate. And by being able to tokenize it, by making it non-fungible, like non-replicable, you actually created scarcity. And that's the scarcity that people pay for because they have a feeling of security, you know, that they know that it's protected. But again, as Christina mentioned, and I personally don't think it's something new. I mean, Andy Warhol was doing it as well. It's about marketing yourself. And some artists, they have the credentials, but maybe the credentials that we wouldn't necessarily consider in the art market. For example, the sale of Beeple 4 or 5 days ago, where an artist who's a graphic designer designs for really famous brands. So for people not from the art world, they hear the brands, they're like, wow, that's really great. Visually, it's quite pleasing. Selling an album for $3.5 million, not being a sort of working within the art markets, working within the commercial markets, and all of a sudden through this marketplace. And I hear so many artists getting really excited, but what the platforms do, they take out the middlemen, and those middlemen are the ones who are curating the market for digital art, for the artist's potential career growth. And that's where maybe some of the fears might be coming from as well.
I think, I mean, there's a lot that I would love to say about this, but sort of to summarize, I see effectively the evolution or the start of digital art has obviously opened up. It has become a new tool for artists to express themselves. But at the same time, technology has allowed for a different way of artists entering the market and sort of being recognized. And this is where I'd say we are today, where more and more we are utilizing the technological tool to sell art. And of course, that could benefit physical art, but also, and especially maybe digital art, because it's native within sort of the technology. And then I think we're taking it even a step further with NFTs and the evolution of sort of blockchain. And I wanted to ask also Christina and Bill. Bill, I wanted to ask them what sparked you to actually write this book? What sparked you to write a book about the influence and of the digitization of the cultural world? Because as you say, you're not just talking about art, but you're talking about the cultural world sort of in general. And then Christina, moving on also to then the evolution of technology like NFTs, and where do you see that going sort of for the future? So I would say that these two, from everything that you said, these are the two things that I would like to touch upon.
I did not say the book. The core of the book is not what has digitization done to art. It's what
Exactly,
what has the internet and other factors in the 20th century done to the ability of artists to survive financially. I mean, the title was not my title. It's the publisher's title. We can talk about it, but that's what the title is getting at. That in the age of the tech platforms and in the age of massive inequality, it's harder and harder for artists of all kinds to survive financially. Digitization has probably been the most important aspect of that in almost all of the arts for the reasons I already said, because it's driven the price of digital content to zero. It's also enabled artists, we've been talking about this, it's enabled artists to circumvent the gatekeepers and find and build and sell to their own audience. And that's the good side of it, and I talk about that a lot in the book. The visual art world, insofar as it's been dealing with unique physical objects through physical locations like galleries, has been exempt from that financial logic and has followed a very different path. The question for me that this conversation is raising is that the more and more art migrates online, either because it's native, as you put it, native digital art, or because artists are using Instagram in the ways that other, musicians are using YouTube to publicize. How much is how much are the same financial consequences going to follow in terms of demonetization, in terms of a huge number of new entrants into the field? This is one of the problems. It's not just that music has been demonetized. It's that literally millions of people are now putting their songs online, something that was completely impossible in the age when you had to get a record deal. And that's obviously cut the pie into smaller and smaller pieces. So what's that going to do to the art world if it follows the same path?
I don't know if we have the answer to that.
No, I know.
It's up to date, but it is, I mean,
I think Julia, the reverse side of it is obviously you're sort of putting the knife into the wound, but actually I think the reverse side of it, that looking at trade and who is buying, so that people participate more on the buying side that felt previously excluded. This is potentially too expensive, or I don't know, I don't have enough knowledge in order to take that decision, right? So I've seen that a lot in running art fairs, that an art fair was this sort of quite democratic, not in the first preview days, but basically wherever you would do an art fair, people who consider themselves sort of interested in arts would also come along, and they would love something, but they couldn't take that decision, right? Even if they could afford it, it's like, oh, I don't know, I don't have enough reference points actually to take that decision, I saw. But by having, and I see that effect on I don't know, on my friends, and generally looking at the market statistics, that not only more art is getting sort of produced, and also from the non-professional, not the professional artists, but also on the other side, there is more buyers entering the field that do not come from an informed point of view, as in knowing the art history and how that particular piece fits into it, but they actually feel themselves represented. And this is why I was talking about identity, right? And I see a lot of artists expressing social issues or identity issues in their work, and so the buying side, or the people that look at it, feel represented by it, and are ready to take a buying decision depending on the price point. And so what Alex was saying, and I think this is the where NFT and the blockchain technology enters, it actually can guarantee you a certain scarcity. Yeah? And with the books, as you said, William, I think that's maybe a good example. So any artist can also sell an NFT or an edition at, I don't know, $10, as so to speak, that's the price point of a book, and say, okay, this is that. And I know a lot of artists that have a big following, but and they have people ready to come in at a certain price point, whether it's $10, $20, $100, depending on the personal pocket, right? But for these artists, it's critical to actually use a technology that would actually limit that, right? So that would limit that run and say, well, it's actually just 100 or 1,000. And so they don't want to send around a high resolution file, I don't know whether a file share or in an email, because it's their bread and butter. They still want to control it, or they want to be in control, as in who gets it. And I think this solution on the technology end, that gives that key. And as you said, maybe it's even a positive side. As you said, it's sort of entered the professional world and everyone feels the trigger to be creative, right? So in order to be competitive on the professional side, you know you're not creative, but you're gonna now take that effort and you're gonna look at other creatives and maybe learn something from them. And I think that's maybe a positive even effect, that being and looking at art sort of will make you understand that you're not able to do the same thing. Yeah, so, and even following a creative or an artist over time will tell you, wow, this person just puts out amazing work in this very timely manner, right? And even, oh, if I feel like I could do the video, I try to do it, and then I end up in tears not being able to do that, right? And this recognition that you're actually not able to do that, and I've seen that sort of around me. And I think this following, this Instagram effect, that you actually follow someone who puts out quality work, right, or meaning on a consecutive timeline, I think this is a big learning. And I, at the same time, have to say, I encounter a lot of self-pronounced artists that drop here and there project and feel very much artists. And then you're like, no, yeah, it's not, it's a nice project. Yeah, my mom can also saw something up, but it doesn't make her a professional, right? And I think, and I'm really seeing myself constantly explaining to people, it's like, and I have all the respect for you for doing that project, but just it's a different thing, type of dish if you actually do that on the consecutive level. Yeah.
So, Christina, is it what you're saying also, that basically in terms of the evolution of, for example, digital art, or even also sort of physical art being sold on digital platforms, is that having an NFT, is that the answer, I think, for the future, for you to think is like, okay, well then this is how we can actually differentiate this, and we can continue to grow the market. And actually, yes, you're right, Bill, obviously digitization has made the pie sort of bigger and everyone gets a smaller slice. Before, there was a much harder barrier to entry to the market or to the status of an artist or creator. But then how can we continue to evolve and protect, those who are artists and creators? Yes.
So I'm actually for bigger pies for artists, right? So I'm not I'm raising the voice for the bigger pile for artists. And I think also the professional art world as it is does propel that. So and also this system that when a curator picks an artist that has a significant following and that is talking and comes maybe from even a different continent and hasn't been not very in the public eye so far, picks it up and gives it an institutional recognition and then puts it through, so the pie or the size of the pie of the artist actually grows. And I think that is, and I see that, so I'm not condemning. I love the institutional art world and I love museums, and I want digital artists to show in museums and artists to actually have museum shows and also use that institutional mechanism, writing catalogs. So this professional industry that writes about artists, that catalogs artists, that puts it into the art historical framework, there's no way I'm going to demonize it. It's great, it's fantastic, and more artists should be having a place in art history. And number two, NFT and the ability that you can actually purchase from any point of the world your artwork, that is fantastic and is great. But so when I was running art fairs for 10 years, and you have professional buyers and you have professional collectors that just know their way around it, right? They look at an art, they understand where to place it, where it comes from the artistic context, from the canon. They know that. They look at it and it's like good work, bad work. They're able to judge it by sort of the peers. Fantastic. But there are people who wanted to, so that came to an art fair and wanted and brought some money and they wanted to spend it. But really what hit me hard was their inability to take that decision. Yeah, and they really liked it, but they sort of needed to take a photo to send it out to their grandmother, mother, brother, sister. And so it's like, I really like this and I can actually afford this, but do you like it as well? Yeah, so this inability to process and to actually make that like financial decision and also to live with that at home. And that really struck me, right? And this was the inability to take that decision. And I've seen that, and I think, and that's why I'm in awe also of this generation of people that can take that decision. And I see that with Gen Z, with the younger generation, they're looking for that identity recognition. They're looking for that, like, this is talking to me. This is talking exactly to the points that I care for. This is what I care about, and I find that in that artwork, and I'm ready to pay whatever money I have for that, whatever my pocket allows. And I'm not looking for that bigger peer group of like, do you like it too? Do you like it too? And I'm in awe of that generation of people. And I definitely saw that in Gen Z. So when I was running the artwork, the younger the people, they were like, oh, this is fantastic. Yeah. And either I'm going to bring whatever I have, or I'm just going to borrow some money and just going to buy it because I love this artist. It's, I don't know, a feminist work of art, whatever it is. Yeah. And I think I see a lot of just being able to take that decision from that generation. And I think many of those are actually participating in an NFT purchase and collecting of NFTs. Yes.
Thank you. That's great. Sorry, I was also, there's a lot going on in the chat. I can't keep up. I think the topics is...
Could I just pick up on one thing in the chat?
Yes.
It may not be the most important thing, but
Yes.
Ray talked about the pace of production. This is really a ubiquitous phenomenon in the art and the digital age. You know, you talk about artists putting work on Instagram. Instagram and other platforms expect regular production. I profile in the book an illustrator. She also has shown in galleries. She's mainly an illustrator. She built her practice completely online, starting from scratch in her 30s. It was terrific. She also almost killed herself. I mean, after 7 or 8 years of constant, literally constant work all day, every day, because she needed to post every day on Instagram. She was physical wreck and emotional wreck, depressed, exhausted. This is not the way real art gets made. And one of the good things about the visual art world and the objects being so expensive is that people have a long time to make their work. And if you then put that on the treadmill of digital platforms, it's going to be a completely different story. And people have been writing about aesthetic value. I'm a big believer in aesthetic value. Aesthetic value has a lot of trouble surviving in that kind of context.
In the context of constantly keeping up with...
Of constant production.
Of constant production.
Constant production, constant self-marketing. I mean, that's also what comes with being online.
I mean, that's a great, I mean, I would love to open up actually these questions to some of our audience as well, if they agree with you. But Alex, what do you think about this? In terms of the quality versus keeping up with the production? I think it's great. I don't know if it fits digital art or new media art. Let's open it up though.
It's a very wholesome question. And I think it's not only digital art. I think it's about pretty much any form of art these days. But I think the platforms that so as an artist, you should, I mean, you often make a decision. What is the pathway? What is your artist trajectory? Are you going to be an Instagram artist, or are you going to develop your own websites? Are you going to have a representative? Are you going to sell your art in the crypto marketplace? And all these questions for an artist, they're a bit overwhelming. And not every artist has a strong digital acumen to make that decision. And some artists, they focus all their efforts on, you know, building their social media following, and then they leave a bit less time on, you know, producing the work. Other artists, they focus on producing really good work, but then they don't have that much time to market themselves. So, and again, I don't think there's any right or wrong here, because we've seen, you know, different scenarios of artists rising to fame. So I think it is really hard to tell. Unfortunately, it is true though that the market these days in technology dictates a certain threshold of character that is more acute to being a really good marketer. And we, unfortunately, also at .art, working with so many different artists, we see that those who are more proactive get one step further. So unless you're lucky to have a gallery represent you and really nurture you along the way and be your sort of like the PR arm, and then you can just focus on your art, I think you have to learn to find a balance. And the best way, ideally, is to probably have a strong network of mentors, of artists who are successful, who are a bit older. So I recommend to everyone always identifying your mentors or artists that, you know, you think highly of, curators you think highly of, and seek their advice in that sense.
Thank you. Thanks everyone, by the way, who has participated in the chat. I wish you know, we could save it and send it out, because I mean, there are lots of great comments. And I just wanted to say, Ray was saying Instagram, for instance, is a great distraction from making good work, and the galleries have shifted the marketing responsibility to the artist, not understanding that it takes time and energy invested in the art. Yes, I think you are right to some extent, and some artists they'll only work through Instagram. They don't have gallery representation, but Instagram becomes their, you know, their own gallery, effectively, website and Instagram. This is what I've learned, at least this year, especially working with sort of new media arts. And Darcy says, artists have always had responsibility for marketing themselves. Look at the history. Yes, Darcy, you're right. I think especially before the evolution of the market, so before sort of the end of the 19th century, I guess the artists were sort of on their own to market themselves. So I think there is a lot of, I mean, and we're coming up to 1 hour, so it's great. There will be a lot to continue to talk about, to be honest, also on this topic. But they're saying to me, I can't save the chat. I can't multitask. I'll look into that once we come out of the Zoom. But yes, I would love to save this one, and then perhaps save some of the great comments and share it. Perhaps on our on the CADAF Instagram, for example, like takeaways of the talks. If everyone agrees, that will be actually a great, and maybe even with our guests. So I would like to thank you, the three of you, for participating. We always think that 1 hour is enough, but every time I come towards the end of the panels, there are so many other topics and areas of conversation that come up that I always feel like we should do at least sort of another one. Has been, and for me at least, it's always a learning curve. So thank you for sharing your expertise, for sharing your time. Thank you. Well, Well, thank you and enjoy the rest of your day, because I was thinking, so Christina, you're in New York, Bill, you're in Portland, Alex, you and I are in Europe. So for us, it's the end of the day. And
yeah, thank you so much for hosting us today. I saved the chat just in case. Don't worry.
Oh, great, thank you.
We're gonna make sure that we have it.
You're my partner in crime, so yes, please, can you send it to?
After hundreds of different panel series, I think I'm a bit of a survivor with this. The best part was when I learned how to turn off annotations. That was the worst hurdle. But I wanted to say, I mean, we are not going anywhere. So you can find Christina at Blockchain.art. You can find William's book. You can find Kadaf.art and obviously art.art. So you have our names. You can always reach out to us for any questions about all the variety of different fields we're working in. So thank you.
Absolutely fantastic. And happy holidays, everyone.
So yeah, we survived almost this year. Thank you.
Yes,
thank you.
It's almost the end of the year. Reason for
Thanks for all the artists, all the museums, all the curators and the writers. I think we are a community and we're gonna hang in there.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Thanks for this conversation. Goodbye.
Bye, everyone. Bye-bye.